Standing on your two knees, baby, tell me what do you need? Stand up on your 2 feet, baby, that's how it's got to be. Standing on your 2 knees, baby, tell me what do you need?
Welcome back to the Muslim Street. You're listening live on this first day of the new year, 2012, January 1st, 2012. Listening live from WTAN 1340 from Clearwater, Florida. This is Laila Abdelaziz with my co-host Malik Aziz. And that was the soulful voice of Hindi Zahra, a Franco-Moroccan musician, jazz musician. So definitely that's someone to look into. Again, her name is Hindi Zahra. Today, Malik and I are discussing kind of what we wanted to wrap up the year with, the main issues to look at ahead for, ahead of us in 2012 that kind of surfaced to our attention, to our consciousness in 2011. We just finished discussing, kind of wrapping up the importance of the Arab Spring. We could talk about each one of these subjects for hours and hours. It's definitely a never-ending topics with us, but we want to move on to the indefinite detention bill, to the National Defense Authorization Act, which we've been bringing to your attention for the past couple of shows, but something substantial happened in all of that.
Yeah, the Detention Act turns my stomach. And I would tell you that as we...
You want to remind us what happened yesterday?
Yeah, President Obama, where everybody was either out turning up champagne or driving drunk down the street, signed the bill HR 1540, the National Defense Authorization Act, into law. And there was this, kind of disclaimer that, he did it with reluctance. I don't buy that whatsoever. Here's a man who is the quote-unquote leader of the free world, who is embarrassed.
I think dismantling civil rights cannot be pushed aside by some reluctance, you know?
Exactly.
Like establishing a martial law state cannot be excused with reluctance.
Yeah, I've had enough of the excuses of his apologists. He's the leader. The buck stops with him. He talked about during the course of his run-up to the election of the past administration's draconian laws, the Patriot Act, and how he was going to go after that. Well, he signed that too. This Detention Act, which is nothing more than a CIA covert operation that they had and have been running since the mid-1990s. This extraordinary addition, this is nothing but the domestication of that. And to know that American citizens, and particularly this is targeted in the context of the United States quote-unquote war against terrorism, which is code for war against Muslims, there should be some alarm. Now, lastly, there's an article that appeared on the Muslim Street that I would urge people to go take a look at. And it's called The Detention Act and the Hypocrisy of the Oval Office. Maurice Salakan, who is a human rights activist with the Peace Through Justice Foundation, he made Laila a very interesting observation. He said, yeah, this was an unfortunate decision that the president signed this legislation, but it may have crossed the line. And that line meaning that there are other groups in the country, other than Muslims, that are going to be affected by this.
Completely. This isn't just specific to the Muslim American community.
And a bill like this, a law like this signed into legislation can galvanize a mass movement toward, the stoppage of how these draconian practices of the Bush administration have now become the draconian practices of the Obama administration.
There's a lot of irony here, and Malik and I were discussing this before the show started, but I think the ultimate irony is that the National Defense Authorization Act and the indefinite detention bill that is included in it was signed into law, was codified into law by a civil rights attorney, by a constitutional law professor, by America's very first African-American president. And to me, there's a lot of very deep, disrespectful symbolism there to any community, to any minority community, to any conscientious constituent within the United States in general. This is very disrespectful. It's ironic in a very sad, melodramatic way. So definitely the indefinite detention bill is something to look into. Unfortunately, as we've discussed previously on the show, it's law now, you know. There's nothing that can really happen until someone is detained indefinitely and then they appeal their case or whatever. I don't know how that would really go without trial, without charge, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know how you can appeal something when you're not being charged of anything, when you're not being put to trial. So it's definitely something that's going to be the talk of very important civil rights discussions in 2012.
And these are the discussions that the Zulus were having in apartheid South Africa. These are the discussions that the Jews were having in Nazi Germany, and now has visited American shores. And for the American people to allow this to, kind of go by the wayside, I suspect won't happen. And I do suspect that we will see the kind of galvanizing, broad-based galvanizing, coalitions being built across racial lines, religious lines, class lines to deal with these issues. At some point, we have to say, what we're going to have left. What's next? The black community is under a police state. It's like, well, what are we going to have next? I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we kind of have to move along to the next topic, which isn't as uplifting, and it's just as depressing, and it's the atmosphere of yet another topic that we've discussed pretty intricately here on the Muslim Street, and that's the growing Islamophobia that we're seeing here within our country. That's the dialogue that we're seeing from candidates that were hoping to become president of the United States, saying that they would never admit a Muslim American to their administration, that, there's just this very disrespectful kind of dialogue of Islamophobia that's become very mainstream and okay in the United States. And it's definitely something that we need to discuss.
Yeah, throwing around these buzzwords like Sharia law, which is nothing but red meat to the most right-wing elements of the Republican Party. They are trying to create wedge issues to drive energy to the polls as they move toward. We saw it in 2010 with the elections in the House and the Senate, and of course, as we move toward the 2012 presidential election. They know that they need to get out the vote. Islamophobia, this quote-unquote Sharia law issue, which is not an issue here in the United States at all. It's like, what are you talking about? Has become the red meat, and they've used other kind of red meat in the past. It's just that Islamophobia is front and center, and as you said, it has become acceptable.
It's become acceptable, and that's kind of the scariest thing. Fortunately, I think you and I are both very blessed to know very great leaders within our community here locally in Tampa and Florida in general. There are people that stand up to this thing. There are.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
Florida is the center of Islamophobia for the United States. Florida is where we're seeing the Florida Family Association, for example, that has the I don't even know, the willingness to say that a show is un-American because it's speaking about Muslim Americans, and try to kind of create this codified meaning and symbolism of this normal portrayed Muslim American family. And it's very discouraging. But I think as 2012 comes up, we'll see, I'm hoping that we'll see a progression within the Republican presidential candidates that will bring a maturity to their campaigns that won't really revolve around Islamophobia.
Yeah, I think still you have the right-wing element, the Tea Party element of the Republican Party who will continue to drive those issues. But this has to be the darkness that Nietzsche talked about when he talked about that God is dead, and that the darkness has came over the public square. Darkness has come over the public square in the United States of America. There's no question about it. Hatred equals darkness, and they're owning it right now.
I completely agree. It's very unfortunate, but we'll see where this goes. And I think that, projects like the Muslim Street, the speakers that we have on the show on a weekly basis, that these things bring to light the essence of the Muslim American community, which is the essence of any community within the United States. And it's the commonalities that need to be addressed, and the commonalities that humanize us together here in this society, and really are the true definition of what it is to be an American, which is to be able to connect to your roots, to represent your roots, to have that motivation and foundation, and continue to push for what you believe in while encompassing American values. But as we've already discussed, the Constitution is being thrown out the window, the dialogue and the fear that's being driven within our society. We'll see where this goes.
Yeah. So, the burning of the Quran right here in Florida, it's just, it never stops. I think I even saw some YouTube out of Colorado where some Christian lady, one of these Pam Geller types, tearing the Quran page by page, giving her address out, saying, this is where I live. You Muslims, if you want to come and do something to me. Her not knowing that the Quran wasn't revealed on paper. It was revealed in the hearts of the people.
Definitely. Again, thank you for listening to the Muslim Street. Please stay tuned after this quick commercial break.